This video is sponsored by Woodworkers Guild of America. This is the largest piece I've worked on in a really long time. It was a chore just to get this home. I had it strapped inside the Jeep with two straps to two different sets of D-rings, strapped the back tailgate down. The weight of it alone was holding it in, never mind the straps, so it wasn't going anywhere, but still, I could really use a trailer. I used this footage here just to prove that yes, that actually did fit in a Jeep Cherokee. I had posted a picture of this on Instagram and so many people were so excited about this map cabinet. But I have bad news, it's not a map cabinet, it's not even old, it's not even wood. This whole thing is MDF. All of it. The top, the sides, the drawer faces, the drawer boxes, the legs, everything. Except for those little drawer guides on the inside that fits into that slot on the side of the drawers. Those for some reason are wood, everything else is MDF, all of it. This is actually very similar in construction to these two cabinets I redid a while back that were also MDF. Those also had a bit of an apothecary vibe and I ended up turning those into this cabinet here. And there is a video for it, I can link to that down below. But yeah, everything, even the framing is MDF. Now looking at the back, this is a modern piece. This was made in 2017 in China. So what on earth am I going to do with this thing? I'm so glad you asked and I can't wait to show you. Stay tuned. My name is Angie and I refinish furniture. Sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't, but I always do what I can to save old pieces from the trash. Welcome to my workroom. So when I saw this thing come up on Marketplace, I jumped on it right away. I'm actually surprised I got it because the woman I bought it from said she had so many messages about it. And a lot of it is probably similar to what happened on Instagram where a lot of people were thinking this is much older than it actually is. So I have many options with what to do with this. I can really lean into that modern side, spray a rich dark color like a jewel tone or something like that, put modern handles on it. I could do that. Or what I think I want to do is actually make this look older than it is. Clearly, I'm going to have to paint part of it. This thing is so large, I definitely don't want to have to buy enough veneer to do the top and the sides. It would cost a fortune. But for the drawers, I'm actually going to be making my own veneer out of white oak and facing those MDF drawer faces with actual wood. I did give this a good cleaning. There were some cup marks and spills and stuff. This was actually used in a retail store for a while, so it's not at all surprising that it's a bit dinged up. You want to be careful though when you're cleaning something like this that's either pressed wood or in this case MDF. Obviously you have to clean it, but you don't want to let any cleaner or water sit on the surface. So spray it on, scrub it, and immediately dry it. Otherwise you can have issues with the cleaner or water swelling that substrate and you don't want to mess with that. I had done a poll on Instagram about different types of hardware for this piece, except I didn't let them know this was exactly what the hardware was for. And a lot of people did like the original polls, but a lot also like the ones that I'm opting to go with. And they are a little bit more sort of library catalog looking polls. And I just think it's going to work a little bit better on this. Even though I'm not going to be using these cup pulls on this piece, I'm still going to clean them and put them aside in my stash so they'll be ready to use on another piece. So as mentioned, I am going to be painting the top and sides as well as the trim in the front, except for those areas where the drawers would be. I'm actually going to face those with the same veneer I'm putting on the drawer faces. Now this is not a laminate surface. This is literally MDF with a white primer and a couple of paint layers with a technique that's actually used quite a bit in furniture flipping today. It's that sort of pottery barn looking dupe. Sometimes they use a couple of different paint colors and drag a straw broom through it to kind of give the appearance of wood grain. That's what's going on here. Now I did find pieces similar to this online, but the majority of them are made of wood. This is from the American Amazon website, and it doesn't look like this one's available anymore, but it's showing here that this one is made of wood. It looks identical in terms of shape and the pulls and the size. Everything is exactly the same, except that, yeah, this one is made of wood. It's not a very high quality wood, but it's still wood nonetheless. So quite likely what I have is basically a foreign knockoff version of the same piece. So you'll see as I'm kind of scuff sanding, that white primer is going to show through. There's some spots where the MDF is going to show through because there are spots that are a little bit bubbled. So I need to get everything flat, and then I'm going to put a coat of primer on it before painting to make sure that I have an even, consistent surface to paint on. There was one little sort of tear here that I just pulled off, and the small little gap where there's some missing, I'm going to fill in with some filler here in a moment. Now, I'm using wood filler on this because I like this product and it doesn't shrink. It is a wood filler, and again, this piece is not wood, but that doesn't really matter. There's a lot of dings that you probably can't see on camera, but I can feel with my hand. There's scratches, so I need to fill those. And then later, a coat of primer is just going to unite these different surfaces. So I mentioned I bought some quarter sawn white oak and some just regular white oak, and I'm using the bandsaw here to rip thin veneers that I'm then going to plane down to make sure they're completely smooth and uniform. But these are going to make up my new drawer faces. Now, I haven't used a bandsaw since grade 9 shop class in the mid-90s. This is my first time using this bandsaw that I bought for myself a while back, and it's a bit of a learning curve. I can see so many things I'm doing wrong already. This part was actually filmed about a week and a half ago, and since then I have come across a fantastic resource for woodworkers online that not only showed me what I was doing wrong in these clips, but how to fix some problems I was having with drift with the bandsaw blade, which is a fairly common problem. So Woodworkers Guild of America is an awesome online resource for all things woodworking, project ideas, information, and these are all instructional videos, professionally shot, and these experts will walk you through every technique with step-by-step demonstrations, giving you tips and tricks that are really easy to process and understand. I've always been interested in woodworking, but it's a little intimidating, and I've kind of slowly been dipping my feet into it. Thankfully, through watching a few really good videos, I was able to figure out what I was doing wrong on the bandsaw and how to fix it. Even though I don't build furniture per se, this is going to come in really handy for trying to fix furniture. I do want to try building some things, a few small things. Furniture for bunnies, actually. We buy little IKEA beds for our bunnies. They're fine, but I'd like to try to do something a little bit more stylish, or just a little bit different. I'll be learning as much as I can from this online platform to help me along that journey, so that'll be a really fun video all about the bunnies. So the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the video description box below will get a full year of premium membership to Woodworkers Guild of America for only $1.49. A big thank you to Woodworkers Guild of America for sponsoring this video. I am super excited to learn more. So these are the strips that I've cut for the drawer faces. Like I mentioned, I did have a little bit of an issue with drift, so I'm making myself a little sled here, putting the flattest side down. I don't have a jointer, so as I was cutting, I wasn't able to face joint all of these. So I'm doing the best I can with what I had to work with. This seemed to work pretty well, taking off a little bit at a time from the high spots, until finally I was left with these awesome strips of quarter sawn oak veneer. I trimmed them down to size on the table saw, and then I had to do a little bit of color experimentation. These first two were created with dye stains and then a glaze over top. At one point I thought I might go a little bit mission style with kind of a reddish tint, but I like this top one the best. I want parts of these drawer faces to look more worn or more aged than other parts, and this stain that I made here on the top one with Odie's oil and pigments is going to be perfect. Now this is my stack of 39 drawer faces. There's not 39 drawers. Remember, some of the drawers have multiple faces on them. If I was attaching these to wood, I would probably use wood glue. But because I'm attaching this to MDF, I need something a little bit different. So I'm opting to use contact cement. And right off the bat, I screw up and put it on the wrong side. I forgot to flip these over. I have sanded down one side of these, which is supposed to face out. So I need to flip all of these over and add the contact cement to the back. Never a dull moment. All right, with that crisis averted, I can move on and start putting this on the back. You can roll contact cement on. I'm using a brush here just because these are small and I feel like I have a little bit more control. On the MDF panel, because it's more absorbent, there's a chance I might have to do 2 coats just to make sure that there's still enough left on the surface when I go to bond these. And now it's time to apply my strips. I'm just using this little homemade burnishing tool here. You could use a roller as well to make sure you have a good bond. Already I am loving the variety of wood grain on these. This is so much better than the initial look. I just used a blade to trim a few that were a little bit oversized because not every single segment from the factory was perfectly the same size. And then once that's done, I am rounding the edges here of the veneer and sanding everything in preparation for stain and finish. I wanted to fill in the grooves in between the supposed drawers, so I used a little bit of water-based stain in the color dark oak, as well as along the edges. Now, as far as the finish goes on these drawers, if you remember, I was going to go for sort of an ombre look. What I'm using here in the middle is just plain Odie's Super Duper Everlasting Oil, just clear, no pigment in it. But on the edges, I'm using the stain that I mixed up. So for this stain, I used the Odie Super Duper Everlasting Oil, some Odie Safer Solvent, and 2 color pigments. I used Burnt Ochre and Southern Pecan, or Pecan, depending on where you are in the world. It's okay for the clear Odie's oil and the Odie stain to touch. In fact, you want to blend them. That's what's kind of giving this that sort of worn-in look. Here's another view of it. I'm going to go right up to the edge, get everything on both sides, and then I'm going to use a different sponge to kind of blend them a little bit together. When I'm ready to wipe back, I'm going to start in the middle where it's clear and wipe to the outside, and you can see you get that beautiful gradation there. You can play around with this. Really, the sky is the limit with something like this, but what I wanted was for it to look light or worn where the handles are going to be. I love, love, love how this looks, and I think it's just the right amount of lightness here in the middle. I want every drawer, in quotations, to look slightly different. Now, if you've been watching for a while, you know that I don't have a dedicated spray booth. I have a huge spray tent, but as big as the tent is, it's not big enough for this piece. This is a really long window shade that I bought at an online auction years back, because at one point we were going to put a projector out on the deck for movies outside. That never happened, and it's been sitting there for years. So it dawned on me that I could mount this to the ceiling and pull it down so that when I'm spraying things that are either small or large, and I can shift the object back and forth along the screen as I'm spraying, it's going to protect my cabinets. And then when I'm done, I can just roll it back up. So I'm going to finish scuff sanding this top here, making sure everything is completely smooth, and then I'm going to be spraying on a flat black primer. Now, I obviously don't want to get primer or paint on these, so I'm adding some plastic to just protect those while I do that part. I have my air filter running. I'm using a respirator because this stuff is smelly, and I'm going to get to priming. Now I could have used a bin shellac primer, which is kind of my main primer when I do prime, but sometimes I find a spray is just faster. I'm also going to be painting this dark, so having a dark base is just going to make the painting process a bit easier. Now I'm going to be mixing my own color here. You see the swatch there kind of in the middle of the screen at the bottom. That is roughly the color I'm aiming for. That is the color that I picked for my office redo and my relaxation room that I'm building. I used a little bit of woodwick, a little bit of bayberry because I wanted to tint it slightly green, and then cast iron, which is kind of an off black. And you can see I'm fairly close here, but I want it to be a little bit darker still. So I'm going to add a touch more cast iron. And test it again, and that looks closer to what I'm going for. So now I can mix the big batch. I'm just going to dump my little test sample in there, rinse out this jar, and then when I have my final color, I'm going to fill that little jar up again to give to whoever buys this cabinet in case I need to do touch-ups in the future where this is a custom color and they can't just go buy it. I did 2 coats of primer and then very lightly sanded down before I started painting. Now I like to do a really light scratch coat with a brush. So that's what I'm doing here, with the exception of the top, which I'm going to roll. And as I'm watching this color dry, it is close, but I'm still finding it slightly too green. I wanted some green, but I find it a little bit too green. So I'm going to add a touch more cast iron, which is going to give me that perfect final color. So now that that's ready, I'm going to fill up that little jar that I mentioned. That's going to go to the new owner, whoever that is, and then I can start rolling. So I'm going to do 3 rolled coats on the top and 2 rolled coats on everything else. And normally when I use a roller, I like to lightly sand in between layers. I find you just get a much smoother finish. Now, ideally, the smoothest finish possible would be with an actual sprayer, which I do own, but again, this piece is just a little bit too big for me to spray in this workroom without getting paint everywhere. So rolling it is. This piece looks like it's wobbling here. It's not, it's completely stable. My floor has a large dip in the middle of the room because there used to be a drain there. So because this piece is kind of spanning a good portion of the room, it's not quite level on the floor. I had a little bit of paint left over at the end, so I'm doing something I very rarely do, and that is painting the back. Finally, it is time to put the hardware on. So I made myself this little template. I took a sheet of paper, folded it up, covered it in tape, marked the dead center of it, and then traced the outline of the hardware so I could kind of visualize what I was doing. I found the middle of the drawer and put the edge of this masking tape on it and ran it straight down. So what this does is it allows me to put the template right up. I had punched a hole right in the middle of the template so I could see where that edge of the tape is, and then I can punch my holes from there. And this saves me from having to measure each drawer individually. Because each drawer face is a slightly different size, I have to kind of eyeball this, but that's okay with the kind of rustic front that I'm going for. And with each segment, before I add the handles, I'm actually applying some Odie's wood butter, which is going to just give this a really nice soft luster. The wood butter has a higher wax component than the regular Odie's oil, so in a way it's kind of like adding an extra layer of protection while applying a soft wax. And it's kitty safe. I know it's been a while, but let's have a look back at the behemoth that I brought home. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's a little bit scratched up, but you know, someone would have bought this as is and absolutely loved it. But because this piece was completely MDF and had no real redeeming qualities, I wanted to see if I could turn this into something that looks much more elegant, much more warm and rich, and make it look older than it actually is. As always, thank you so much for watching, enjoy the reveal, and I will see you next time.